So let's convene the meeting at 4:59. We have Diana Roney, Jamie Fitzpatrick, and Pam Brown, and that's gonna be it for tonight, just the three of us. How did the minutes look, Jamie?
They look fine to me, I reviewed them.
So,
Have any
the
issues
minutes are
whatsoever?
approved, thank you. Update on superintendent evaluation form. I just wanted to mention that the superintendent evaluation form and policies went back to the policy committee. And even though our committee had looked over the evaluation form, we kind of started from scratch, basically. We took the old form from last year and we just made a few small changes to it, rather than add in some of the sections I had suggested at our meeting. So that's fine with me, I mean, and now it's gonna go to the full board.
So I just had a couple points to make on it, and I reviewed it.
Let me see if I have
There's
a copy
nothing
in
overly
here.
dramatic. But it talks about legal issues, consults with legal counsel as needed concerning legal issues facing the district, advises the board.
Right.
Just one thing, I think that there is legal discussions that happen that the board is not aware of. And I guess that tied into, you also sent around the job description.
Right,
The job description says that that only happens with the board. And that's not really correct, right? So there are instances where the superintendent would initiate legal counsel without the board's involvement.
correct.
But the,
And that's why we struck requested by the board and has it written as needed.
so on the super job description.
Yeah.
Let me find it.
Page 2 at the top, number 2.
Yeah, it says consults with as requested by the board. Sometimes there's instances where that's not the case. I believe.
Right.
So anyways, I tried to look at the two together
I see, yeah.
to see how it played out. But sticking just with that, that was one of the things I noted. Some of the things we wouldn't know, like labor relations, handle staff grievances appropriately.
Mhm.
We wouldn't know that on the board. So not sure how we'd evaluate that because
Right.
we wouldn't know that.
Right, what section is that?
That's
C?
page 5, item 2. There's just a few of them like that
Yeah.
that we wouldn't know. Handle staff grievances appropriately.
Oh, I see it, yeah, there
We
it
wouldn't
is.
know that.
Right,
I think I have another.
yeah, that's from the old evaluation.
Is it?
So can you bring these questions to the full board meeting?
Sure.
And we can have them examine your changes.
Here was another one. Holds regular meetings with Superintendent Safety Task Force and stays updated. Well, I know that that's true because he says he's having meetings
Right,
with them,
yeah.
but I'm not aware of what goes on in the meetings. I'm not.
Right. Well, he gives us
I wouldn't know if
updates,
he's
but-
really meeting with them or not. I have no way of knowing that. I'm not part of the
Right.
safety group and nobody on the
Well,
board is part
I
of the
think
safety
they meet
group.
once a month on a Monday, but that's.
So there's just some things in the evaluation that would likely yield from a board's perspective could yield just NAs because we wouldn't know.
Right. Well, my interest in adding the student safety section.
Well, I think it should be there.
Was to highlight the fact that we're very focused in on safety and any best practices, any new technologies. And by adding this to the evaluation, it signals to Tom or whoever is our superintendent that this needs to be a priority, that he's reporting to us if there are any, even if it's just a meeting coming up. Just mentioning that at the public meetings, to me, is a signal to the public, you know, we're really focused on this.
And maybe there's,
So-
we incorporate some type of a regular update to the board in closed session on what's going on in the safety.
Right, I don't expect them to give any details that would expose us to any threats or anything. I don't want that to happen.
Oh,
Because
no,
they have their own protocols and procedures that are important to be kept confidential.
Correct.
Right.
Definitely, so that's important, but.
That's why I say closed session, and I don't,
Just
even then, I
generally
wouldn't
acknowledging
be
that we're
providing a
working
lot
on
of
this.
information, but just, this is the
Right.
kinds of things we're doing these trainings.
Mhm.
We had discussions with this group of people about different safety concerns.
Right.
Nothing that would be important to maintain confidentiality on, just letting the public know that we're on this topic and we're focused on it, so, those are great changes, I appreciate it. I am trying to fulfill my New Year's resolution by not wondering why this went to policy, because it's really a personnel responsibility, but my New Year's resolution was to be more like Tom. So it was good to get
Gonna
feedback.
curl your hair?
Yeah, right, I'm gonna start
He's got
letting it.
he's got much more curly hair than she does.
He does. So instead of wondering why it went to policy, I actually found the discussion productive when we met and discussed it,
Right.
because it kind of clarified my questions about the form and the procedure.
Yeah.
So, it was a good thing to, go back to policy. So I think we're ready to forward this again. I just wanted to let you know that we had gone over it again.
Yeah.
And the way it looks now, we're gonna be bringing to the board. So moving on to travel reimbursement. So Matt Angel, our VA, is going to talk about that, I guess, in a future meeting.
He is,
Okay.
he's working on that, so
It's very detailed.
it's very.
And there are regulations too, so he has to
Right.
check on those.
Right,
I think Tom had
So-
indicated that they're taking a look at what they can do, for lack of a better phrase, on an interim basis, like what can we do to liken it to how policy works in the government, and by executive order until the legislation is ready type thing.
Right, yeah, I see. So moving on to C.
can I just say one
Yep.
thing about the superintendent's evaluation? He just wanted me to let you know that he's good with it to go to the board, so I
Right.
just wanted to mention that.
Okay, great, so we'll just take it as it is now and amend it if we need to. I think it looks fine, but again, there are things we can tweak. So exit interview questionnaire, I did print it out in case Jamie hadn't had a chance to
I did
see
not.
it.
Me
print it,
too,
But I did have it up on
Oh,
my
you saw it,
computer.
okay, I didn't know if you saw the email.
Copies too.
I did make my own copy, thank you.
So I took your notes, Jamie,
Yeah.
incorporated them with what I had, and this is the latest version. And of course, with an exit interview questionnaire, we can always add to that questionnaire.
Well, particularly if you're doing this, I would presume, as in any interaction with two people, depending on what they say, it could lead you down a different path or other questions, et cetera. And it's all gonna be depending on what information the person truly feels is relevant. And this is just trying to get a conversation going.
Exactly, right.
I mean, it'd be nice to get
Guide.
to hit these, so you got a consistent data set,
Right.
but you're probably gonna get more in the other comments kind of area of,
Yes, and my intent is to give this to anyone who's leaving, this actual form, have them complete it. Anonymously, they can send it back to me, or they can fill in their name and that information. But at the same time, I'm going to have a conversation with them.
right,
So it'll be a duo,
right, and then this can give you some guidance as to what to probe at and where,
right?
particularly as you start seeing, and presumably some patterns will develop, that's why you do this.
Right,
You start seeing some patterns, and then you can start probing as to getting some
right,
hints or ideas as to what might we do if it's a pattern that we don't want
right.
demonstrated
Exactly,
to do something about it.
right.
I mean, some patterns we might like, well, there's too much work. Well, okay, yeah, there's a lot of work in teaching.
There is.
If you can't do that work, then,
Right.
but perhaps it's a good idea.
Right, exactly, right. So,
I only had one change I wanted to think about on question 10. How would you define the culture? I think the word define is okay, but I was wondering, since the person is exiting, whether they could maybe assess the culture instead of define.
good idea. Yes.
because that way they're weighing in,
I realize that, yeah.
Yes,
I thought describe might work, or assess, one or the
I
other.
like assess.
Yeah, I do too.
Yes.
I think that's much better.
And that was my only comment. It's a great form, so thank you so much.
Yeah, that is good.
Now, does this form have to go to the board? I'm not really sure. I would assume that the board would approve. It's more of a guideline, I would
Right.
think. And a
I,
guideline doesn't necessarily, it's not a policy, but
I would
Could
think
be.
we'd simply bring it up that this is what we're doing.
Right.
If somebody, you know, you can take it home, you can look at it. If somebody wants to bring it back up for further discussion, that's fine, but I don't know that it needs a board approval.
right.
But maybe people on my board will say, "Yeah, absolutely, okay, let's go."
Sure.
okay.
That's fine too.
Right. So how does that work? Do you bring that, do I give this to Phyllis to add to the board?
If there's any change, you can, like, we might wanna change that one word, but I can forward it to Phyllis for the packet of documents, and I'll just give people information. This was what we had discussed, and we'd like the board to look it over. If you have any comments about this, we can discuss it at the next meeting.
Yeah, please forward to the chair of the personnel committee to be reviewed at the next personnel
Right.
committee. In the interim, we'll proceed with
Right.
this.
And
Something like that.
and knowing that other questions, like you said, once I'm in a conversation with someone, other questions might be asked.
It's kind of a
So it's-
starting point
Right.
for reflecting on their experiences, so,
Right.
okay.
Okay, why don't I make the change?
Oh, sure.
And then I can forward it to Phyllis if you
Okay.
want. Would you prefer if it came from you?
Oh, no, that's fine. What I'll do is, I'll just have this in my personnel committee report. I'll mention that we had developed this exit questionnaire,
Okay.
and I'll say that it's gonna be forwarded to everyone next week, and if there are any comments, questions, concerns, please let me know.
Sure.
And the personnel committee can review it again, but we think it looks pretty good.
Great. So I'll have Phyllis forward it to everyone? Is that how that normally works? You tell me.
Generally, if it's gonna be something that. we're
Yeah,
going
I
to talk
normally
about,
would,
should be
if I forward anything, I say, please don't respond, since then we're violating, the right to know. You
Okay.
can't have dialogues through the email. So yeah, if you would forward it to her, then I will, and you could CC me,
Okay.
then I'll say, hi Phyllis, could you please forward this to board members? It's an FYI for them. And I can ask them, would you like to move to approve this? You mean, if they have it this weekend, they may have looked at it. But I don't know if it's necessary to have a motion.
Right.
I'm really not sure. Okay, great. So I think this looks wonderful.
Good.
Yeah, it does look good.
The
Particularly
last,
since we have nothing.
I
right
think
now.
that our annual goals are almost done. So we can just, conclude our meetings for the year, probably by Christmas, I would think, or earlier.
Oh, yeah, the job descriptions we still gotta get through.
Oh, that's right.
Isn't that like
Never
a
mind.
big problem?
Big
Yeah, okay,
project.
never
Not
mind.
perhaps.
It seems like we're almost done with most of the goals. So policy GDB, so tonight we can discuss it, but it is a policy, so it needs to go to the policy
Yeah.
subcommittee eventually before the board looks at it. And I did look it over. Could you just kind of guide us through the changes you're
Sure.
presenting in the document?
So on page 2, number 5, bereavement leave.
Page 2, I'm sorry, it's at page 10.
Oh dear.
Sorry, that's just
That's
my
okay.
packet.
Page 2,
so-
number 5, bereavement, okay.
We've added sister-in-law, brother-in-law in, and the professional staff, CBA, uses this verbiage, brother-in-law and sister-in-law. So we try to stay aligned to the CBAs. Normally, this policy is reviewed after, a new CBA is created. So, thus the reason for sister-in-law, brother-in-law.
So, so, that's new.
That's new.
So that's new.
That's new.
Okay. And on that, in that section, it says, in that sentence, or any other person living in the home of the employee, or persons for whom the employee, should that be provide support, or it says is support, maybe I'm just not understanding the sentence, but, I think it should say
It's awkward
provides.
the way it's written, I
It
picked up on that too.
It's supposed to be,
Employee is supporting.
probably is supporting,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't need the for whom then, you would just say,
So living in the home of the employee or persons
for whom the employee,
support is
Supports even,
or support.
or is supporting,
I thought provides support would be probably the
No.
least awkwardly worded change, but. Does that work, provide support?
That works. That works.
And then on the next sentence, I believe there should be an and after circumstances. Additional days for bereavement leave may be granted by the superintendent of schools and under extenuating
Yes.
circumstances, and such days will be drawn from sick
Yes.
leave. Okay, so that's the other change I had for that section. This was in the old, policy. Back on page 1, under casual, part 3, casual, part-time. If you go down to the third sentence there, it should be part, not pan. There's a little typo on the first page. Casual, it says pan time. That sentence is, yeah, keep going down. There's one sentence right there. That's
oh,
it.
pan time, yeah.
Yeah.
I have part-time.
You do?
Yeah, pan,
I got Pam, I think.
as in Peter,
You do?
yeah, she's got part.
You do, okay, I had Pam. Well, anyway, it's just a minor. And so, where else do we have changes? Normally we put the changes in red so we can find them quickly.
So mine are all in, do you not have, so
No,
what I sent?
I have blue and black, and that's it.
I just got this from the agenda.
So
I didn't see the red, oh my goodness, I'm so
Yeah.
sorry.
I don't think
So
that.
take this. And
Oh,
take
is that
this.
another copy? Thank you. Oh, I see the red now. When I opened it, I didn't see the red, I just saw
Well, it didn't have red.
the
On the-
strikeout
on the agenda.
sections. No.
So
thank you.
this was all attached to the agenda?
This,
No, I
Did
didn't
you
have the
retype
red
that?
sections. I
Did
didn't
you?
have it highlighted in red.
I printed that from the agenda.
Right, I'm
as
so
opposed to
sorry, I
some
didn't see
place.
anything in red, I just
fine.
printed it. So, okay, I see the sister-in-law, brother-in-law now,
okay,
and,
good, this will make much more sense to
right,
you.
I didn't see that, it was not folded up in a different color. And then under vacation schedule,
So Tom and I worked on this together, and what really prompted this was when we were hiring our new tech person, who had years of experience, I think he had 4 weeks vacation. You come to us and fall under this category, the non-union support,
right,
and you go your first year with no vacation time. So it really prompted us to take a look at this and see really if that's the way that we wanted to go with this. So these are the changes that Tom and I talked about that we thought made sense.
right. And that was a full-time employee?
So full-time and part-time, so. Yes. Now, so non-union support encompasses tech, custodians, and, the SRO or the safety officers at the high school. And like myself, anyone else in the SAU office who's not an administrator.
Right,
So those groups.
So I had a number of comments on this.
Okay.
So just let me know when.
Go for it.
So the first item 1, wages, it says that this is reviewed on an annual basis. Do we do that?
What page are you on?
Item 1, page 1,
Oh, okay.
says an hourly rate for each position shall be established annually by the school board to include custodians, maintenance personnel, all SAU office personnel. Do we do that on an annual basis? Because I've not seen anything on the school
So
board.
that's
so
their-
maybe it was done before I got there.
An hourly rate for each one shall be established annually by the school board to include, well, this is their contract for the next school year. So I don't have an answer for that. I don't know during the school board meetings if, Tom says, okay,
Do you recall that?
all
Tom?
these people
I
receive
don't,
a 2% or 3% or 1.5.
If there were discussions, it would be in non-public. So we may have had discussions, but
I think he does do that.
we don't.
I mean, it makes sense. I just,
It's
I've
not
never been on the
something
board
that
long enough, so I don't
we
know.
address
Right.
every month or, a few times a year. It would be once a year.
It would be once a year, right?
We just should verify that happens and we should
I'm
probably
pretty
set
sure we've
time
been
when it
doing
does.
that, but it's like a 30-second discussion. It's
Right.
really quick and,
Because this group of people, there is not a matrix.
right.
It's a percentage,
Mhm.
it's usually a percentage, so.
Well, I'm pretty sure Tom has been doing this, but I can't say that, the prior administration was doing everything as required. For example, we did not evaluate the superintendent during one of the years I was here. I mean, there's things that should be done, and there's things that people forget to do, basically, for whatever reason. So I think Tom's been pretty good about following up, yeah.
I was just on the policy meeting, just point out that it would seem to me to make most sense that if this is going to be an annual review, that you set
A
a
date.
month certain that it gets
Right.
done, so that, it's, pick the time, June, July, whatever.
Mhm.
Oh, it's July, we do the annual review of this, and then it
Okay.
just becomes routine.
So contracts are required to go out, the policy, well, is it saying in here? Contracts,
When do rate increases take effect?
July 1st is the day they take effect. So this group gets their contracts by June 1st. So these.
So this should be like a
wages-
May thing that happens,
Right.
no later than May, April or May.
Well, so I would say no later than June. Just because April and May, it's the professional staff and the
Yeah.
support staff. So they're usually, we usually know by the middle of May. But to be safe, I would say June 1st.
Okay.
Well, the last section of the policy states a written agreement for employment will be issued by June 1.
Right,
So it's kind of right up against that deadline.
so.
That's the last thing on the,
So, you know what,
policy.
actually, we're not looking at, when we say, we're talking about a rate increase or no increase, if we could do, they would love to know by definitely May 1st or the middle of
right, so they can make a
So,
decision.
You're right, so
I
maybe
think-
we do May 1st.
Yeah,
Mhm,
something
okay.
like that would make sense.
Okay, so I'm gonna add that to my notes for the policy meeting.
So that was one. That was a bunch of them. So coming from the private sector, I see the 13 days of sick leave, and I go, holy and expletive, really?
I know, it's standard, it's every employee, like teachers, support staff, administrators. I think
Right.
they're 13, they might be 15, but it's just standard throughout the school.
I mean, what I would want to know on that, and I don't know where that data set is available, is, so I've been in union factories, I've been in non-union factories. Once we start identifying you're allowed X number of sick days, a very large subset of the population deems that those are additional vacation days, and they have that many sick days, miraculously, exactly that number every single year.
And I'll tell you what I notice. I notice it more in the union sector versus this group. I notice it more there.
It just, in the union sector, that's part of the contract, but I would
Right.
certainly want to be highlighting to our negotiators that's an unheard of perk
That's
It's-
huge,
in the
yeah.
business world.
Correct, but it's a standard in this education world.
Yeah, I find more and more that the education world does pretty good
They do very well.
compared to the people that are funding the education world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also cumulative, so you get 120 days,
Mm-hmm.
which means you get paid out at the end 60 days, if I'm reading this right, because you get paid out half
Correct.
if you're at 15 years.
Correct.
So I just thought it should be noted, that's huge.
It is,
The
I
people
know.
funding the operations don't have anything like this in their lives.
I know, yeah.
I know.
Then there's a personal leave, 3 days per year.
Mm-hmm.
Is that paid or unpaid? It does not say here.
Oh, that's paid.
That is paid.
Mm-hmm. And again, that's standard throughout with everyone.
So, again, looking at this, adding up these paid days, so you've got
You're making me think of a funny joke I saw once.
you got
It's a
13.
paragraph and it says, and I have these days off for vacations and these for sick days, and, oh, I know what it was, the employer is saying, so this is down to 1 day of work and you're not getting this day off. I mean, it's funny, but I mean, I remember that.
And remember,
joke.
the union, the paras and the teachers, they don't work 260.
Oh, I know, that was the point I was gonna make.
Right.
Mhm.
So you've got a whole group of people that already had 3 months off. Now, it's not paid,
Right.
however, that's part of the life balance that people make decisions on
Mhm.
when they're picking careers. But you got 13 plus 3 is 16. Plus, we're saying if you're a 10-year people, we're proposing 4 more weeks, which is 20.
Right.
That's 36 days a year. On 20 days a work month, it's 2 months of the year off.
So I
it's
think
a
there-
bit high to me to be moving some of these
It does
vacation
say
times.
employees who are not school year employees are not eligible for vacation time.
Correct.
Correct.
And there
I
are only
did-
2 that meet that, the 2 safety officers.
Right.
You know, so I think, and I see what you're saying, and I think maybe they're 2, I know they combine into one total amount, but they are 2 different, in my opinion, categories,
Yep.
vacation, sick time.
Of course they are.
But I.
There's a reason they're negotiated and selected that way.
Right.
Because who, as a decent human being, is going to say, "Oh, you're sick? Too bad, you don't get a dime."
Right.
The problem is the road to hell is paved with good intentions. You know,
Right.
I would like to find out, so if you can make a note of this, is what does the data show? How much of a percent is this used? You don't have to get into people's names or anything like that. Just what is the percent? You got X number of people that are eligible for this. How many days are being taken out of X times 13? You get a percent. That percent tells you how sickly our population is.
Right.
So, and again, I just wanted to point out that
Yeah.
everybody does need to remember that people funding education don't get these types of perks.
Right.
I think the argument is that if they aren't given 13 days sick leave, then they'll simply shift over to a district that does provide 13 days. But the argument against that is, well, these are jobs that someone would like to have. perhaps not the people that would go elsewhere, but there are people that could fill the jobs at a different number of sick days.
Well, and how about taking a look at, as one thing that one could assess?
But unemployment is pretty low in New Hampshire right now, so that's the problem. There's no excess capacity for us to find people.
But there's a balance. So if you have somebody that always, every year, the theoretical person, because I'm sure it doesn't happen this way in the real world, but the theoretical person that's always out 13 days every single year, you find out, well, what is this percentages and what's the average cost?
Right.
If you drop that to 1 week, sick day, and increased everybody's pay, now you're really rewarding the people that actually come to work every day, and you still have some coverage for people that do get sick. So, I mean, there are ways to rebalance incentives to avoid loss of good people.
Right.
But I think also, from what I understand, this policy tries to follow the union policies. So that's where you're getting that 13 from, that's what's been for years, forever. And so this is just a following of that.
So the one other aspect of that is, so that's one way to do it. So that the reason one would do that is, well, if the people that are not unionized get the same benefits as the people that are unionized, there's no incentive for those people to join a union and lose more of their pay to be unionized. That's one way of doing it. Another way of doing it would be to provide discretion and ability to deal with somebody. So let's say that rather than you have 13 days, you have discretionary ability under unusual circumstances that a superintendent can use when somebody comes in and their child, God forbid, is going in for cancer treatment. 13 days just doesn't cut it. Then there's an ability to make a management decision to still cover that. And if those types of things are available to the non-union groups, perhaps the unionized groups would say, what are we really getting for this? There's a better way to run this. Sheesh, I don't think I'm really benefiting, because I'm the conscientious person that I don't do that because it goes against my grain. I don't take my 13 days a year. I don't think it's right and I'm not going to do it, but I'm stuck in that world. I like this other world better, where they can take into account my personal circumstances to deal with that. And so, I mean, there's ways to provide proper accommodation of people's needs and proper payment to people to do a job that isn't just all cut and dried and it's this cookie cutter or that cookie cutter.
And the administrators who are retiring this year, I know 2 of them have their maximum amount of vacation days. So they haven't used them,
Right.
So I'll pull together some stats.
It would be interesting to see.
Yeah, and I'm going to divide it up by group too, because that makes a difference.
It will. I believe it will.
So I'll pull together some stats for that.
It would be interesting to see.
Well, I know this doesn't refer to teachers' contracts, but as a teacher myself, when people would attack me for having the summer off, I said, I'm just getting my weekends back.
Right.
Because every weekend I was grading homework, preparing quizzes, catching up on emails from the college. So to me, I was just getting the weekends I've lost all year back, so I could finally clean out my, that spare room, or you know what I mean, do the sewing I've been putting off. So I'm just complaining, but
But remember,
teachers work harder than we think.
Oh, I wouldn't want to be a teacher. Yeah, that wouldn't work. It wouldn't work for me. It wouldn't work for the kids.
Well, you're a teacher your own kids. So.
I just something to think about. If this was to change the sick time, you have, let's say, the custodians who, they're not making a lot of money, some of them. This is one of the, I'll say, perks, although sick, no one wants to be sick, but it is one of their benefits. They're working 260 days a year. And right now, they're not getting all of this vacation time. They're working that whole year before they get any vacation time. So, sometimes, I just don't want there to be a big,
I'm not trying to
difference.
net change
right,
anybody's current circumstances. I would much prefer to rebalance in a manner that works better for the district and the employees. So I'm not trying to net reduce anything, but you want to have a set of plans that benefits most those that do most.
right,
And those that you can count on to be here all the time
right.
versus those that you can count to miss 16 days a year.
Right,
There's a difference between those sets. And sometimes that 16 days is absolutely positively 1,000% correct and proper for the circumstances. But those types of circumstances don't usually repeat every single year.
right.
And if the time off does, then it's being taken as additional vacation. It's not being taken as what was intended.
Right. So something to keep in the back of our mind and think about.
So on the vacation thing, so there's some data sets I would like to see there. Is we're proposing the change. What is the cost of that change? So there's going to be numerous people that fall within this category now that are all of a sudden getting paid days off that they didn't have before. Don't know how many, don't know how much, but we ought to know that before making a decision on a change. And just personally, I find getting 4 weeks at 10 years rather early to get 4 weeks.
What is it? Do you know what it is in your organization?
We used to be, you had to get 15 years to get 3 weeks.
Really?
When I was going through.
Okay.
So when I was going through the dinosaurs, which is puppies, so it was a long time ago. But presently, I think that you can get to 3 weeks at 10 years. But you cannot get to 4 weeks until 20 years in my company.
So is there an in-between, between 10 and 20? Do you know?
There is similar steps like you've outlined here. I can probably find the vacation policy as an example of some businesses. And some businesses, like high-tech people that are in crazy California, they say, well, you have as many vacation days as you want. We don't charge that.
Right.
Well, you just got to be here working 15 hours a day every single day.
Right. Exactly. Right.
So
Right.
I do think you need some structure to it.
I do too.
So that the people have some certitude that, no, I'm entitled to this. I need some mental health time. I'm getting out for a while.
Right.
But it would be good to know what those data sets are, but I think we're being overly generous. I have no problem at the bottom end. If you're trying to get somebody in and you're telling them, come to work for us, we're giving you UGATs for a year and a half, that's just not right.
Right.
So I don't have any problem on the lower end. I think that to address the lower end, we climb the higher end too quickly, would be my
So
opinion.
90 days, you get 2 weeks off vacation. What's that about? I don't really
It's
understand
all, so that,
It's what you're eligible for
right.
in your first year, as I'm reading it.
Correct.
So you don't work 90 days and then you can take 2 weeks
that.
off.
Right, yeah.
Once you work 90 days, you're out of your, and tell me if I'm wrong, you're out of your probationary
Right.
period.
Oh,
Once
that's
out of
right, I
your
remember
pro-
reading about
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Once out of your
Yeah.
probation period, you really start in your 1 year time frame, but it probably
Right.
backdates to when you started the probationary period.
Oh,
if
no,
you
that's
passed
fine.
it.
I remember
So
now
that
there was a
within
large
that
section.
year,
Right.
you get 2 weeks.
Correct.
Okay.
Not like you do your 90 days and you take 2 weeks off.
Right.
I wasn't clear
No,
on
not.
that, but okay, I see that. Sure. Okay, great.
I will take a note to try to find mine just as a reference point.
Okay,
for you.
I'd be
And I know that it was
interested.
just barely liberalized, if that's the right word. It was made more generous, so I guess it is the right word.
Right.
It was made more generous
So they lowered the
about 5
threshold.
years ago, yeah.
Okay.
Um,
Shouldn't be too hard to find data for these things.
Right.
But it sounds like it's pretty much standard for the industry, is what you're saying, that these numbers are pretty much what.
You
other
can
districts
find, if you search, I'm sure you can find different companies that,
Right.
like, for example, as I said, it's not hyperbole to say, there are high-tech companies that say, you can take as many vacation days as you want.
Right.
We don't even track it. Whatever you want, take them.
Right.
There's companies that do that. There's companies that said that they're going to pay everybody the same as the CEO.
Right.
That particular company I'm thinking of doesn't exist anymore.
Right, I remember that.
But you can find people that do anything, but the broad spectrum, you do come to some, for lack of a better term, norms that seem to be the equitable position.
Okay.
But I'll find mine just as a
Yeah, I'd like
as
to
a
see it.
as a boilerplate.
That'd be great.
I'll try to find that tonight or tomorrow. Depends on how long silent agree here keeps us.
Got it. So, and then, we added employees who are school year employees are not eligible for vacation.
That means what exactly is?
So that means, so we have two that fall into that category, the two resource officers.
Yeah.
So they, just work school days,
Right.
so they shouldn't be entitled to vacation time.
Since they're not here over the
But
summer.
that would say,
Okay.
oh, okay, because I'm thinking, well, what about teachers? But teachers are they're the CBA.
Right,
Okay.
right. So the SRO or the safety officers, they don't, they get, they don't get paid,
Right,
for those days, but they don't work, summers and
right.
vacations.
Yeah.
Those were, oh, I have one. How about?
Under holidays, I noticed there's a typo. Part A below, the last line should read, only those holidays that fall, not falls. Okay, I just took out the S.
Is she a teacher or what?
Yep.
So, school districts shall pay, and it gives these percentages
Yeah.
for the health insurance.
Yes.
So I made a note, we can always offset vacation costs by reducing these percentages for the increase. Just a thought. I was gonna look up, so this says, if I'm reading this right, $300 per month waiver for health insurance. That's $3,600 a year for not taking insurance.
Correct.
Do you know offhand, I mean, I can look it up in my data somewhere, but do you know offhand how much it costs us for the average plan?
For the average health plan?
Yeah. So we're paying $3,600 to save what?
For us, boy, this is a real rough. For a family, 25,000.
It's in that neighborhood, okay.
Yeah, for
Makes
a
about sense.
single,
18, yeah.
18,000.
Okay.
That's a rough.
No, I'm just trying to get a feel.
And this is across the board for everyone.
Mhm.
For teachers, paras, this is the norm.
It'd be interesting to find out what our participation rate is here.
It's a good participate. I can get that.
Because it might be better for us to pay people more money to not take insurance.
Right.
And with the plurality, I think, if not the majority of households now being double income households, if the spouse has it, that becomes a significant pile of money because double insurance really doesn't buy you a whole lot.
Right.
I mean, when you try to apply a double insurance and our deductible's this, but you just ask, you're basically taking on a second job just to try to manage double insurance.
Right. And there I do have some, not many employees who will make their decision whether they're going to take our insurance versus their spouse's insurance based on this.
Yep.
The majority who take the insurance, they need this insurance for their family or their spouse's insurance is so expensive that it's not even a consideration for them to go to their spouse's insurance.
But it would be good to see what the participation rate is. So just to make up numbers.
Yeah.
So nobody that's watching get really excited about this. Just for demonstration purposes only. Do not try this at home. If you're paying $3,600, and many people don't do it because the cost of adding that family to the spouses is too high, even if the spouses is better. If you double that to $7,200, you might negate that, get more people to switch, and at $7,200, since that person would presumably be doing a double, somewhere between 18 and 25, then you're saving somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 for each one that it makes sense for them to do that.
Right. Oh, I just, I belong to a, statewide human resource group. And seems like every day someone's throwing out a question. And one of the questions recently was, do you offer a health waiver in your school district? And how much is that health waiver? And very few do not. Most
Yeah, I would
do.
think, yeah, we do that also in our
Do you?
company. Most companies that I know of do that for the same reason that we're talking about.
And they, it's all over the board, 1,500 to 10,000.
Yeah.
Just all over the board. But it would be interesting to, if we put out a survey to our employees
Yeah,
and said,
who would be interested
who
if
would
this was
do
higher?
this? You know, if this was 7,200, then we'd have to come up with a
Yeah.
number, because even 7,200 saves us money.
Right.
But, it would be interesting to see how many would take that.
The goal in all these things is there a different way to provide for the employees so they're not being detrimented at all, that helps them and helps the district manage costs at the same time? And if you can find those keys, those are boxes worth opening. I mean, those are locks worth picking if we can find them.
Right.
Depends on what their options are outside of the
Correct.
district.
Every person will have a different thing that they're balancing in
Exactly.
And the cost that they face.
the equation.
Yeah.
Right.
So, okay, let's look into that.
Another question, part-time employees as defined in Article 2, this is further down on health
I
insurance.
see, yeah, I have a question.
Employment status will receive 50% of the amounts listed above for insurance as they choose to elect.
That's kind of written funny, isn't it?
Yeah, because my question was, and they only get half of the 90% subsidy, right?
So what
they only get
Yeah, I was thinking of
45% paid.
82.5%.
So
I mean, 42.5. Okay.
So how it works right now, and we're talking professional staff, teachers,
Yeah.
parents, everyone across the board. If you are a part-time employee, then the district's contribution is only half. So if the plan is $20,000, then the employee is responsible for 10%. Now there's a formula that goes with this, because it's really 50% of the 90%.
Okay, but there is the 50% of the 90%.
But it is 50, so we don't have really a couple of employees who are part-time who take our insurance.
So, my thought would be, when I used 20 in my own head when I was doing that, I said, okay, 20,000, if that's the number, and we're at 90%, because my math is easier,
Right.
that's the district pays 18,000. If you're part-time, the district is only paying 9,000. You got a 20,000 policy, so you're picking up the other 11.
Right, and the numbers that's the basis for the numbers. And let's say they take the waiver, their waiver is 1,800, not 3,600.
Yep, okay, so it's half on everything,
Correct.
all the way through. So that begs the next question, because I was like 50% of that thing. On the term life insurance policy, a value of twice the employee's annualized wages. If you're a temp, is it only your actual wage?
If you're-
Half of twice your wage?
Part-time,
Yeah, if you're part-time.
it's your wage.
It's your wage, okay, so the 50% really does carry through all these.
Right, correct.
Okay.
Correct.
The longevity is an annual payment, so
It's an
between
annual-
10 and 14, you're picking up a $250 check each year.
Correct.
So I'm understanding that correctly?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Last page, just again to make sure my understanding is proper. Overtime at 40 hours a week. So if I'm working 10 hours, 4 days in a row, and I've got Friday off, there's no overtime.
Correct.
Because it's 40 hours a week, not 8 hours a day.
Correct.
Okay. Then severance pay. maybe I'm reading this wrong, but the way I read this is we pay people to quit. If I volunteer to leave, you'll write me a check.
We do give them a severance.
Even if it's their choice to leave,
Mm-hmm.
that's completely unheard of in the business world. In the business world, you only get a severance if you are told to leave.
Well, and maybe the wording is wrong. Maybe severance isn't the correct word. It's just you're right, a one lump sum payment recognizing the years of service that they've put in. And I don't have the other CBAs with me.
I
But
do.
again, I think is my computer even working now?
We could check that.
I do believe severance is in those CBAs.
I will say my eyes get more and more open every time I see some of these things. It's kind of like, what? Where's my CBA? Where are you? I can't just do it the way that we do it here in this Google world.
Oh,
It's
no.
horrible.
I mean, I can fake my way through that, but.
So for the teachers,
Oh, we don't call it severance in the teachers anyways, unless I can't spell severance. Severance. Severance, no.
Maybe it's in the page, just in the support staff.
I'll check it. There's no sense holding everything up for that.
let me find it.
But that was a note that I made on that. What? We pay people to quit?
Well, we don't look at it that way. We look at it as we put in all these years and we're gonna recognize you for that. That sounds better.
It does sound better. In my company, they say we did recognize for you for that. It's called a paycheck.
Right, I know.
Maybe we're a little bit harsher on that side of the world. That's my last comment. Not that I didn't have enough.
So I wrote down some notes. I'll send them to you, Diana,
Uh-huh.
and then you can forward them to Matt and Tom.
Okay,
Just kind of a wish list of things we'd like to see before we redraft it.
okay.
And then we can bring it to policy. We've got plenty of time this
Do
year.
you want to mark
because-
up my notes and send them to you, or no?
I'm gonna type out the questions you had,
Okay.
but if I'm missing anything, you can add to my list.
Oh, okay.
Let's
Okay.
just
That
do
works
it that
fine.
I
way.
made notes too, so I'll check that as well.
So I'm gonna check the CBAs for the severance pay. See what that language says. All right. So, I guess we don't have any public comments. The next meeting is November 13th.
Okay.
And, hopefully Matt will have something on travel reimbursement, but we do need to look at the job descriptions,
So I'm working on, I actually.
but not all of them at once,
No,
just
no,
the important ones that are really outdated.
So right now I have, Director of Student Services, Special Ed. I
Okay.
have, Technology. I have Facilities. We have Tom's. I'll work on, I wanted to get the SAU administrators
Uh-huh.
first and just clear up those. And
Right.
then I think I'm just going to then go through the SAU office itself. And then from there go out.
I made markups on Tom's too, because we got that copy.
That's an old one. It's from
I don't wanna talk about
96,
that,
isn't
So
it?
mark it off.
Well, so what my plan is I've reached out to whoever the job description is for, ask them for their comments, then Matt, Tom and I will meet, we'll go over those, and then, I'll bring them here. So I should next meeting have at least 3 or 4 that will be ready.
Oh, great, thank you so much.
And I'm not sure yet. We had the CEO in this week. I might have to go to Germany for a week
Okay,
fairly soon. Fairly soon would probably end up being this week in November, because the end of November is Thanksgiving.
right,
And I don't want to schedule it if I have any say in the timing on a school board meeting night as opposed to a
Right.
subcommittee meeting night.
sure,
And this night I have the one subcommittee meeting nights, and the other non-school board night I have 2 subcommittee meeting nights.
alright,
So it would likely, I'll try to schedule it when there's no subcommittee meetings, but that's gonna push me right up against the Thanksgiving holidays.
alright,
And if that doesn't work, then my fallback will be this night. And I'll let you know as soon as I have,
we can
final
always,
definition.
we can always change the date.
Yeah, we can do that too.
I'm available anytime,
Right.
really, so I don't have anything pressing in the evenings.
Well, we could always, so what I end up doing is so a part of things is setting expectations. So when I got permission that work would not have an issue, they would not sever me without any pay.
Right.
Yeah.
Talk to them about that.
For taking on the school board thing, what I told them is I need to leave between 2 and 2:30 every Wednesday.
Right,
And what I end up doing is, for like tonight, I go home at 2 to 2:30. As soon as I get home, I start working on this. And then when I get home from this, I continue doing the other
Right,
school work. So
sure.
I basically carve out, I don't know, 6 to 8
You probably
hours every
save
single
time in the
Wednesday
end
to
because of
just
the-
work on that.
you probably save time working because you're not in traffic during rush hour too.
Yeah, but
It's
the 2
probably
to
more
2:30 is
efficient.
before they give you that extra lane on 93.
Oh,
So
right,
93
that's
is still
true.
backed off.
Yeah.
Because you haven't picked
Can't
up
win, never mind.
Right.
But if it comes to that, then, we could do this at 3 or whatever, so you don't have to stay late. I mean,
Whenever's good for
Yeah.
you, just let me know and I'm available, I'm sure, but I.
So I don't even know what the time is, just the suggestion was somebody needs to
Right.
go over and work with the European and Asian colleagues on this project. And since you've already been doing it, kind of you're the one that's gonna have to go.
Right. See, what a shame you get to travel to Europe.
I know what it is.
It gets
That's
old.
silly.
Although what I
Well,
do now is, I usually will take the weekend.
Yeah.
You can actually, if you stay over Saturday night, you can get back and forth at the same exact cost
Oh,
by taking an extra flight. So the last few times I took the weekend in Rome and Vienna and Prague.
Ireland.
And, well, Dublin, I even stop in for the night. I'll pull into Dublin at 7 o'clock at night.
Right.
How long you staying?
3
About
hours.
16 hours. What are you coming in for? A pint or two, then I gotta get back on a
Right.
plane in the morning.
nice.
Okay, come on in.
Wow.
So I do have a question.
Yeah.
Are our meetings normally scheduled for the second Wednesday of the month?
I believe so, but
That's correct.
nothing is set in stone, as you know.
Okay.
There are a few off months,
What
but
do you have for December?
I got some numbers now. Hopefully we have the same numbers.
I have the 11th.
The 11th?
Yeah.
Okay, I just need to know December, that's all.
It's actually posted on the website.
It's posted for our committee?
Yep.
I didn't know
Yeah,
that.
it's out there somewhere.
Well, I mean, things appear not always ahead of time, but you can usually find them on the calendar.
I didn't realize that.
They're not on the
So,
calendar,
yeah.
they're in a separate thing that says subcommittee agendas or meetings.
Okay.
It's a separate bullet, because it doesn't show up on a
I
calendar.
just go
always.
to the calendar,
Okay,
that's how I do it.
alright, that's all I needed to know was this number.
I got 11 too.
Perfect.
We're aligned.
All right, nice.
Good.
I've shown up before with the wrong times.
That's really embarrassing. Yeah.
No, go. Okay, when I go.
It's been frustrating to nail down dates, I'm sorry. It's an ongoing struggle. Great, so thank you so much.
Alright, thank you.
Are we officially adjourned?
We are, yeah.
Okay.